The hot stove season is in high gear. The general manager meetings are coming up. We're going to start seeing some players moving around. We're going to talk about all 30 teams, giving 1 minute for each team to talk about what they need to do in this offseason. It's not This Week in Baseball, but you're going to like it. So we're going to start with the Athletics.
And here we go. So I think when you look at the Athletics, it's a team with a lot of good young hitters. Yeah, Jacob Wilson and Nick Kurtz go 1 and 2 for the American League Rookie of the Year. You got Shea Langoliers, Tyler Soderstrom. You've got a lot of good young hitters and absolutely no good pitchers, and no good pitchers want to go there.
Yeah. The one that you had, Luis Severino, isn't going to pitch there next year. He's a free agent. I think he wants nothing to do with going back to Sacramento.
And you're going to have and that's an organization that doesn't seem to be particularly inclined to spend a lot of money until they get into their new ballpark. And I think a lot of players will probably be just, you know what, if I want to sign with them, I'll wait until they're in Vegas.
Yeah, they did Mason Miller a favor, right, by sending him off to San Diego.
Right.
So I think, relief pitching is maybe better than the starting pitching, which isn't saying very much.
But I think they're going to be a team that's going to be able to score runs. They're probably not going to look to tinker with their lineup too much. I think that, are they going to be able to bring up some arms like Jamie Arnold
he's their
and
big
Gage
stud.
Jump?
Yeah.
That's really all they're going to be able to do here. And we're off to the Angels.
Yeah. So they got a new manager in Kurt Suzuki, who got a 1-year deal.
Which is weird.
Yeah, well, it's Artie Moreno, and basically a 1-year deal means, you better win now because you're not going to be here after next year. And they're not going to win now.
And they got some power in the lineup. You got Mike Trout, who's Mike Trout, even if he didn't have a great year last year. Joe Adell had 37 homers. Taylor Ward had 36. You've got Nolan Schanuel,
right.
And even Zach Neto,
Neto had a good year, and Logan O'Hoppe did too. So yeah,
Kyron Harris got off to that unbelievable start, but much like
it's the same thing.
You've got Yusuke Kikuchi, Jose Soriano, and then a bunch of people you've never heard of.
Right. Kenley Jansen, if you remember, closed this year, past season for the Angels. He won't be there doing that as a free agent. I can't imagine he wants to go back there as he's chasing, a save record. So, the Angels, there hasn't been a young player to come up and sort of, inject some life into that franchise.
Exactly, and maybe they'll make a big offseason move, but that maybe not. And now we're off to the Astros. I think the Astros' big offseason move is how out of love has that franchise fallen with Framber. He's their number one pitcher. He's a big number one pitcher that's going to be available on the market. But do they want him?
Well, I think the catcher he tried to hit in the head and probably isn't too happy about it.
They might want to move on. And while it's maybe not this offseason where a lot of decisions need to be made, this is a team that, like some other teams, is getting older and older. Altuve looks, how Yordan Alvarez is a revelation when he plays, but can he get through a season unhurt?
Yeah, but you've got Yannier Diaz at catcher, who people don't know about, is very good. Jeremy Pena had a great season. They got back Carlos Correa.
Right, and what does that mean?
He's still a good player. And young Cam Smith, they expected a lot from, didn't quite have as great a season as they thought. So they still have the core there that with a couple of pitchers coming in, and that might include Framber, I still think they'll compete.
Right, and I think it's just what are they going to do if they lose him?
Go for more pitchers. The Rangers.
And we go off to the Rangers, managed by new manager Skip Schumacher, takes over the number one staff in baseball.
He waited his turn for this job, because he was turned down he left the Marlins job. He wouldn't take another job, and this is the job he wanted. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very interesting.
I just think it's interesting because you look at this team, and on paper they have all of the parts that should make them good. They had the best, as I just said, the best staff in baseball. They got Corey Seager, who quietly put together a 6-WAR season despite only playing 102 games last season. You've got Marcus Semien,
Jonah Heim.
You've got a bunch of guys that
Evan
should
Carter,
be good.
Wyatt Langford should
blossom. Right. So you have to think about the fact that they missed the playoffs last year despite being as good of pitching as they were, which tells you something was wrong.
I'm gonna be a fool and pick them again.
Right. I think they've earned that. Is that gonna? I don't think that's a team that's gonna make a lot of moves. Their money is mostly tied up at this point. They might try and tinker. Maybe they need a glue guy or they need some guy in that locker room to shake something up. But I don't think that's a team that's gonna be terribly active on the market unless they need a trade.
They need a closer.
Right.
Too. That's something. How about the Mariners? So they're looking to get back to the at least to the World Series and go one step further, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
They still have the starters, right? They still got the guys in Logan Gilbert and Brian Moon, George Kirby and Castillo and Bryce Miller. That's a
I think if they
studly five.
I think it's gonna be interesting because what do you do with Suarez? He's a free agent. He's going to be, do you re-sign him if you're the Mariners?
It's going to cost you a ton.
It's going to cost you
I don't love that player, so
but that's still a lot of
They love him there, though.
Right. And then I think they're also a team that, like a lot of other really good teams, are going to be in the Edwin Diaz sweepstakes because there's a whole lot of teams that are going to look at Diaz.
But didn't they trade Diaz to them?
But I think they're going to look at Diaz and Robert Suarez and go, yeah, we would like to add a top-of-the-line closer.
They need a closer at the,
Munoz is great.
Shut down.
Munoz is really good, though.
Yeah, and basically, the team is much the same as it was this past season.
And as we move on to the AL Central, we move on to the Chicago White Sox, who's truly a team who off-season does it matter?
Yeah,
I mean, they're a team that's seasons away from off seasons mattering in terms of moves that they would make in this 2026 off season, make a tangible difference towards their record this next.
Okay, you're a baseball guy. Who's the manager of the White Sox? Ooh, okay, it's Will Venable, right? Yeah. So that's he got it through the whole season. He didn't get fired, so I guess he's going to be the manager again. And the rest of the team, are a bunch of guys you haven't heard of. Davis Martin, Sean Burke, Shane Smith are your starters. Shane Smith being the only guy that I kind of know a little bit there. I don't know what they're going to do when they basically have Luis Robert, and looks like he should be about 40 by now.
He's only 27.
He's only 27.
You got Benintendi, who might be 40.
I don't know what to do with the White Sox.
Right. I think the White Sox, you're hoping that a player or two that's young emerges this year so that you could figure out what to do with some off-season moves so that 2027's off-season is much more impactful.
And another team that, has the same questions going into the season are the Minnesota Twins.
Oh, you know what? Good on the Twins. They picked their direction.
They pick a lane. They picked a lane.
They decide, are we competing or are we're
trading all our players?
We're trading. I think they're not done trading. You've got Derek Shelton in there. You've got a new Pobo and Derek Falvey.
I feel bad for Derek Shelton a little bit because he goes from the Pirates, for a team that won't spend any money on players, over to the Twins, who sold all their players because they didn't want to spend any money on players.
Right, but at least your team has picked a direction, and hopefully they're going to follow through on that. I could see them dealing either Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez. I think one of those guys is going to
kind of look good in orange and blue.
I think either one of those guys would be a great trade for the Mets. They've got some other young starters, but the bullpen. They after they traded Duran, nobody was left in that bullpen. Unfortunately, Byron Buxton, he's never going to be on the field enough to be a top.
He had about as good a season as he's had in a while this year.
Right. Unfortunately for the Twins, too much has to go right from him, and I just don't think whatever they do this offseason is going to make a big difference. Unlike perhaps another team in their division here in the Kansas City Royals, which is a team that has not traditionally gone out and spent money, but Bobby Witt Jr. and Miguel Garcia combined for nearly 13 B-WAR on the left side of your infield last season.
Garcia?
Right. Played right. So you have to look at that, and they basically got nothing out of anybody else except Vinny Pasquantino. They got to do something somewhere else. You got nothing out of India last year. I guess the only saving grace was that it wasn't like Brady Singer was a revelation for the Reds last year either.
Right. Like they brought up Jack Caglione, who was supposed to be their big stud. Didn't really work out so great this year. Now he's young, and you're going to have to hope that he's one of those guys who's going to propel the forward. Now, pitching wise, they've got obviously Noah Cameron, who looked really good. They've got some really good studly Cole Reagans, Chris Bubich.
They're a team that you would hope that would go out and make a big splashy free agent off-season signing, but I just don't know who that would be or if they would ever be a type of team to do that.
Yeah. Well, they're in a little better shape, than I think going into the season than I think the Guardians are. Actually.
Right, but the Guardians have sort of the same problem. I think that's sort of a running theme with the teams in the Central here is that we don't expect them to go out and really spend any money. The Guardians sort of are who they are at this point, and I don't think they're going to do anything to drastically change that this offseason.
I guess Stephen Vogt's going to go for 3 Manager of the Year awards. And by the way, I could take 5 minutes and talk about how
unfortunately we can't.
We can't do that. I don't understand it. But Stephen Kwan is a critical guy to stay in Cleveland if they want to have the same vibe. I hope they keep him because I think he belongs there. David Fry is going to come back. Daniel Sheeman had a nice
But at the end of the day, they're a team with only 2 starters that had with a B-WAR over 2, and you know exactly who those 2 players are. I think they're a team that's not going to do much this offseason. Maybe next year, especially if they fall behind in the middle of the season or early on, they might look to move on from Stephen Kwan. And they might look to trade him because he's an asset they have, and they need to do something because they're only going to be able to string this together for so long.
I feel bad for Jose Ramirez, too. So
now, the one team I think in the Central that does does need to have a big offseason is the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, I think they're a closer away in a lot of ways for me too. Going, where is that end of game guy? Will Vest is a nice guy, but he's an eighth inning guy to me, or a setup guy. You need another guy that's going to be lights out there, and I think that they lost a lot of momentum by not having a shutdown closer.
Right, their lineup, that it's not any one guy in that lineup that kills you, but they had 5 regulars in that lineup with over 2 B-WAR. So you got a lot of guys that hit well, and even then a bunch of other guys that were just kind of under it. I think you have to worry because you got a year out of Javi Baez. It's
Right.
kind of hard to expect. But they're a team that I think, in some ways, unfortunately, is incentivized to go out and spend money this year, so that they have to go out when they go out and spend money next year on trying to re-sign Tarek Skubal.
Or not.
I think you want to show.
This is the year you go for it.
Right. This is the year you go for it.
I agree.
And
Keep Skubal, go for it. Go for it, Tigers.
And whereas a team that we know is not going to go for it is the Tampa Bay Rays.
But they're at least going to get to play in their own ballpark this year.
That's going to be great.
Their old ballpark while they build the new ballpark, which isn't going to be ready for 2 years.
Right. They had guys that had a pretty good season. Junior Caminero had an unbelievable
45
year.
homers.
Right. Andy Diaz had a good season. Jonathan Aranda had a good season. They had a solid lineup. It was their pitching,
right?
Which
and there usually is very good.
Right. So will that bounce back? We were kind of surprised by their performance up until midseason, but they fell away. When it comes to the offseason, other than maybe looking to sign a bullpen arm to replace Pete Fairbanks, do you expect them to do anything?
Yeah.
They're not a team that traditionally makes moves in the offseason like that.
Their best pitcher was Drew Rasmussen, and, I don't think you're confident that he's going to be the same guy, next year that he was this year.
You don't see the Tampa Bay Rays going out and trying to get Framber.
So, I think that the Rays, they need pitching, but I don't think that they're going for it right now, like you said. So, need a couple of more stud starters that would help, I think, that team, because they hit pretty well this year.
Right. Now, as you go over to the Baltimore Orioles, they were a team that played much better over the last 100 games of the season.
Which is why the manager is not there anymore. Wait.
Well, he got fired. He got fired before that.
Brandon Hine got fired, and Craig Albanez, who I think was a bench coach or was on the staff, takes over. And he's got only 2 starters that have a B-WAR over 2.0, and that's Gunnar Henderson, who actually had a pretty good year. I didn't realize that. And Ramon Laureano, and I don't think I'd be counting on another year from Ramon Laureano.
Right, but they're a team that it's not the lineup that's the issue on that team. It's the starting pitching. Now, we expect some of that to come back just because so much of it got injured that season. But they cheaped out, Baltimore fans would say that team cheaped out on starting pitching, even though they did offer Corbin Burns a big contract. They didn't sign anybody else. Are they going to make any moves?
Is Grayson Rodriguez going to pitch for them finally this year?
Are they going to make moves to try and sign anybody? There is starting pitching and solid starting pitching. Maybe not number 1, but will they do it? You don't know.
That's a head-scratching team to me. Just kind of like the Yankees, where Aaron Boone, the manager, managed to keep his job again.
I think the Yankees are a team that's going to largely stand pat this offseason. Their biggest offseason move is getting Garrett Cole back.
I completely agree with that.
They're a team that looks at it and goes, you know what?
But no Rodon to start the season. That puts a little.
Right, but
they've got Cam Schlittler now.
Right. Max Fried worked out, and they're going to think Max Fried, Garrett Cole, Schlittler. That's going to work for them. They might look to maybe try and grab a first baseman. Maybe they do turn it over to like Ben Rice. There.
I think Ben Rice should be the catcher actually, and full-time catcher, because he can hit back there, and he's good defensively enough that I think that changes the dynamic, because he's a hitter.
But that's a team that I don't think it's this offseason that's going to be big for them. I think it's going to be either next year or the year after, where Judge is 34, Garrett Cole is
it's now for the Yankees.
Right. This is the year where I don't think they don't have the money to sign a lot of guys this offseason.
So they lose Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, but they've still got David Bednar and Camilo Devoe, who they pulled over at the trade deadline.
It needs help, but I don't think big help is coming.
Now the Red Sox,
they're on the hunt.
I like this team.
The Red Sox, I think the best thing for the Red Sox is they're on the hunt, but the thing they're hunting, which is power for their lineup, is available in spades this offseason, because they're sitting there licking their chops going, okay, well, which one of these 40 home run guys do we want?
Yeah.
Do we want
Suarez?
Do we want Pete Alonso? Do we want Kyle Schwarber? There's another guy that's available too on the market.
Well, I kind of feel like Schwarber would fit there.
And even then a guy like Murakami is going to be coming on the market.
Get him out of the National League, thank you.
Right. So, but I think they're a team that is going to be signing a big name bat for that lineup, 100%. They might even still go out and try and sign a starting pitcher to pair.
Yeah, well, Crochet
with Crochet at the top.
They got a nice year from Brian Bayo. Giolito had a year that I don't think you expect it from him. Obviously, they're not going to have Buehler around this year, and Tanner Houck is out for the year. So they need, another innings eater.
Especially because they're going to lose Bregman, though. They're going to need to sign a batter, and that I think is going to be their
I think the first base
thing.
is a good one. And then the American League champion Jays. I said the Mariners made it to the World Series.
They have a big
ALCS.
offseason in front of them, but it's relatively simple, provided things just sort of go according to plan. In that, they only really have one thing to do, and that's re-sign Bo Bichette. But you kind of have to re-sign Bo Bichette, don't you?
I don't know if it would have been done already. I think if they were going to do that.
So now he's up for grabs, and that's got to be worrying because you got some pitchers. No more Mad Max Scherzer, no more Chris Bassett,
unless he resigns.
But those
are
those are replaceable things. But Bo Bichette is not.
Bieber is back.
You can't just replace Bo Bichette.
Yeah, and I think he fits that team at second base because I think he managed to play shortstop there.
Right, defensively especially.
And Clement at third, they got a nice and then at first.
And I think we're going to talk about some teams later on that might be in the market for a guy like Bo Bichette.
So I think the Blue Jays don't need too much, but they need to make the right moves. Maybe a closer would help. How about that?
And as we go for a team that was on the high, we go to a team at the very bottom here as we move to the.
They don't need a closer because they're not going to win many games.
Largely for the Colorado Rockies, it doesn't matter what they do this offseason because literally they would have to just sign an entirely different team for it to make a difference.
A manager for the team hasn't been named yet because they've offered it to 73 guys. They're just
going to pull fans from the stadium every time and just have them do it.
Back in the early 60s, the Cubs had a coaches by committee thing. They had 4 guys managing the team. I'm not sure if that wouldn't be better for the Colorado Rockies.
Right, they've got no lineup, they've got no starting pitching, and nobody wants to come there.
Did you know that the starting pitchers, Freeland, Senzatella, Marquez, and Chase Dollander were a combined 14-60? And their records. I mean, I know records don't mean much in pitching, but 14-60 between those guys, that's crazy bad.
The best, I think, if I was the Colorado Rockies, maybe what I would try and do is sign a bunch of solid-ish, players for team-friendly contracts and hope you can flip them at the deadline for deals.
Yeah, they need so much help.
Right.
And I think the Giants, who Buster Posey hired a college coach, Tony Vitello from Vanderbilt, to come in and manage the team. It's a weird team. I don't know what.
They're going to be
like
active.
Buster, but I think they need to.
They're going to be active in the market. They're a team that are you going to be able to convince Devers to play first or third? What are you going to do? But they're going to be active in that market. They're going to be looking to sign either a big name hitter or a big name pitcher. I think that they want to compete, and that they might not look at a team like the Dodgers as being somebody they can compete with.
They can't.
But they might look at the second place in that division and say, well, we might be able to jump the Padres because the Padres have a crazy offseason.
I think it's too big. I don't know why. They overachieved to do what they did last year, and I think it's a mess that's going to take more than a year to clean up when it comes to the San Francisco Giants. So, and with a new manager there, you're trying to instill a new culture. So I don't know what they're going to do.
I think they're going to make a big move, though. So, and I think as we go over, a team that just has a ton to do this offseason is the San Diego Padres.
Another team with a new manager in Craig Stammen.
But I think more so it's going to be their GM that's going to be busy because there's so many guys that are going to be free agents.
They don't have a lot of players.
Right. They're going to have to sign a bunch
under
of guys.
contract.
Right. Like half their starting rotation, no Darvish, no Michael King. Well, likely no Michael King, no Dylan Cease. You're going to have Nick Pivetta.
Well, those are free agents. You're right to say that.
And and maybe Joe Musgrove. You're going to, Randy Vasquez had a good season for them, but you're going to have a bunch of guys that you're going to need to replace. You're going to need to replace Robert Suarez.
You're going to replace Luis Arias.
Right. You're going to have to do a lot on that team, and there's a lot of moving parts. So that's a team that it's really hard to predict with where they're going to be.
The core hitters, Cronenworth, Bogarts, Machado, Jackson Merrill, and Tatis. Man, that's a good
I expect
core.
them to be active on the market early because it's a team that can't afford to fall behind on the market because if they lose out on the guys they want, they're stuck with a solid enough roster that you can't tank, but you're not good enough.
I don't think they're going to tank. But.
No, but you don't want to miss out on your important players here.
And the D-backs, who I generally like this team because I like the way it's put together, particularly offensively.
I love their 1 through 4 hitters.
But
everything else, I've less.
Right. The 1 through 4 hitters are great, and although that requires them keeping Ketel Marte, and that's a big doubt. This guy has been a stud.
Right. But there's trade rumors swirling. First there was rumors, and then the players came out and defended him, but still they're not sure. I don't know what that means. They need a first baseman. They need a center fielder. They might need a second baseman.
One of the unheralded guys in the team is Geraldo Perdomo, who had a 7.0 B-WAR this year.
Right.
You don't even realize that.
You know, what are you going to do with the starting rotation? Because we thought Zach Gallen, Corbin Burns, and Merrill Kelly was going to be great.
They're all gone.
They're all gone.
Right. And so they're going to basically run out Brandon Pfaadt, Edward Rodriguez, and Ryan Nelson. They need pitching.
Right. Shelby Miller was their closer. They're a team that could be in the market for one of the closers because that could be a big difference, having a big back end.
And they don't have young guys that I know of in the organization coming right up there. Now, unlike the Dodgers.
Right. The Dodgers are a team that will the Dodgers could basically not make a move this offseason, run it back with the exact roster that they have, and people would be like, yeah, okay, that would probably be enough to win the World Series.
But you know they will make moves this offseason.
They'll
spend money in places you're like, oh man, how could they spend that much money on
and get that guy?
And they will get that guy, and they will get they can't bring in Kyle Schwarber. That's the only thing that doesn't make sense.
Right. The good thing is that realistically, though, it doesn't really matter because they're already the favorites. All it's going to change is they're going to win 110 games instead of 100.
And who knows how they're going to do it this year? This year was starting pitchers. Last year's relief pitchers. They will figure it out, and they will spend the money to make sure
they're
that they do.
They're a team that is spoiled for riches in a lot of ways, and they will continue to be spoiled for riches. And all that could end up happening is that they replace their strengths with new strengths. It's unlikely that there's any way they get significantly weaker this offseason, short of bizarre, wacky offseason injuries.
Yeah, well, they're always worried about that.
Right, and where we go from a team that was looking at their offseason from a position of strength, we go to a team that is the opposite, really, in the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I don't know. History would say they are unlikely to do the sorts of things that would be really exciting for them this offseason. Because they're a team that if all of a sudden they went out and wowed us, they were like, okay, we're going to go out and spend $100 million this offseason. We're going to bring in Kyle Tucker and Pete Alonso for our lineup. All right, I might start getting.
I'm going to watch Pirate Baseball.
I'm going to be excited about Pirate Baseball. You got Jared Jones coming back. You got Mitch Keller. You got Paul Skeens. That's a rotation and then a lineup you can be excited about. But the Pirates ownership has never done anything
and
like
instead
that.
Their best player is O'Neal Cruz, and nothing against O'Neal Cruz. He did lead the team and the league in stolen bases with Juan Soto at 38 and home runs with 20. He led the team with 20 homers. They can't go into the season with him being the guy that they're going to basically build the entire team around.
They're just a team that I would love to see them make bold moves, but I just can't see them doing that.
Haven't done it.
Much like whereas a team that I don't want to see them make bold moves because they're just directionless is the St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, Ali Marmol, just amazes me because he keeps his job.
But they're just a team that's like they got some nice players: Contreras, Brendan Donovan, Mason Wynn.
Victor Scott had a really good defensive season for them, and Ivan Herrera
What
too.
is the St. Louis Cardinals' identity? What is their strengths as a team? They're just sort of a collection of somewhat good baseball players.
Yeah, and with a pitching staff that is older and more feeble.
Right. The worst thing about that pitching staff is that it's a year older this year, and that's not good for them.
I mean, Andre Palante, obviously Sonny Gray is pretty good, but he's your number one. Miles Mikolas, he's got a great curveball, but that's about it. And Matthew Liberatore, the lefty, is a good. But they've got a bunch of guys.
There are a lot of players away from competing. So what are they going to do? Are they going to are they going to make moves this offseason, or are they going to move in the opposite direction?
Yeah. Now the Reds, okay. The Reds turned it around.
They made the playoffs.
They did that. Yes, you're right to say that they kind of backed in a little bit there, but they did it. And even though they lost to the Dodgers, everybody lost to the Dodgers, so it's no embarrassment there. Ellie De La Cruz is their best player, and I think that's a problem. I think that.
They're a team that most of their players are coming back this year. They're a team that could use a big arm at the back end of the bullpen. But again, are they the type of team? They're not the type of team that would go out and go sign an Edwin Diaz or a Robert Suarez. I would be really interested in they do that because maybe all of a sudden then you're a team that can challenge the Brewers or the Cubs for a division crown. But unless they make a move like that, which is not something they normally do, they're unlikely to. And they're just going to sort of be back in the same position next year.
They've got Spencer Steer and Matt McClain and TJ Friedel, all guys I like a lot as players to go with Ellie De La Cruz.
And maybe they tinker with their bullpen and they're able to find some magic here.
But the starters are good. They still got Andrew Abbott, Martinez, and Nick Lodolo, and Hunter Green is the number one. So.
Right, but whereas they're not good, I don't see the Reds doing much with their offseason. The Cubs are going to make moves.
The Cubs are going to make moves. And that's not going to be Kyle Tucker. I don't think, although he fits there better than he does anywhere
He
else.
fits there well, but I think that's a team that's going to be moving both on the starting pitching and in the bullpen. That was a team that, yes, obviously they're going to get Justin Steele back, but if you looked at that rotation and told me they're a Justin Steele pitching performance away from winning a World Series, I got a lot of questions.
Well, and Shota Imanaga is probably not going to be resigned there, or I think they're talking about trading. I think he's under contract there.
Right.
He's a guy who gives up a lot of home runs in a ballpark that is conducive to giving up home runs. Our Colin Ray isn't going to be there anymore. He's a free agent. So, their starting pitching is weaker than it was, even though they're getting Justin Steele back.
They're a team that I could see be big on the move. I could see them sign a bullpen arm and a position player. I think they're going to, really be a big offseason player.
They're going to need to.
Whereas a team that I could see being real quiet is the Brewers, because that's a team up and down. Their entire lineup is signed up of team-friendly guys that they got from other teams that they don't need to be paying a ton of money and are locked up for a while.
The only problem they're going to have is there's no pitchers. They don't have any pitchers. Basically, Freddie Peralta's a free agent. Woodruff's a free agent. Who's going to pitch? Quinn Priester?
Do you sign and trade Freddie Peralta?
I think they need him to pitch for them. I think the problem is that their best pitchers aren't necessarily going to be there next year, and they do it with mirrors and magic, and we doubt.
They got Mizorowski. He's going to be back.
Mizorowski, who I expect will be good. I don't think you want to make him your number one at this tender age. Starting him in the All-Star game was kind of fun, but it didn't necessarily help his development because he wasn't as good in the second half as he was in the first half of the season.
Got a good year out of Trevor Miguel, so I don't think they'll be in the sweepstakes for a closer, but I just don't think they're going to be in the sweepstakes for anybody. That's not a team that makes a lot of off-season moves.
And they need pitchers.
Much like another team here in the NL East in the Miami Marlins. Clayton McCullough, is he going to be able to compete for an NL East title? I don't know, because it's not like the Miami management's going to give him anything new to work with.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Sandy Alcantara, they've got Yuri Perez, they've got Edward Cabrera. If they all stay there, and if they wanted to compete, I would say that the Marlins should keep those guys.
But those guys are always going to be talked about being available at the deadline,
up, down the road. And I think that they started believing that they actually might be a decent team this year. And the lineup is still
but they're a team that would be real interesting if they would actually go out and make a bold move like signing Pete Alonso to go play first base. They're a team that even a guy like Eugenio Suarez, just to give that lineup some power.
Or Josh Naylor there would be a nice addition at first base
but
there.
They're not a team that typically spends money in the offseason.
Nope, they don't.
And I am very curious to see if it will ever change.
Yeah, they got a nice young catcher in Augustin Ramirez. Hopefully he can help them go forward.
And a team that I think is going to be at a bit of a crossroads this offseason is the Washington Nationals. You were hoping to take a bit more of a step forward last year. The fact that you were as bad as you were had to be quite concerning, because you went from being like, okay, we might be a pesky team on the rise to, okay, wait, well, no, we're really bad. So what do you do if you're the Nationals? Do you sell on your prospects now?
No.
Do you hold on to them and hope that they have a bounce back year, knowing that if they don't, you're really tanking their value?
Your young guys in James Wood and C.J. Abrams are players to continue to build around, even though C.J. Abrams is a little, they have a little problem with him personality-wise sometimes.
But they need to find
Dylan
some
Cruz
other guy besides those
good.
two.
Luis Garcia Jr. Looks like he can go forward. Jacob Young is. I like some of the pieces they have lineup wise. I'm worried that they're not going to likely sign Mackenzie Gore, re-sign him. Jake Irvin as a pitcher I like, but if you look at his stats, you'd have to say, why do you like him so much? Because it's not that great. Mitchell Parker looks talented. I don't know. I feel like they're still a year or two away from being really competitive.
Well, now as we move away from the bottom of the NL East and move on to the Mets here, this is a team that will be active in free agency this year, and I think in a big way. They've got a lot of questions. Will they re-sign Pete Alonso? Will they re-sign Edwin Diaz? Where will Brett Beatty ultimately settle playing at either second or third? I think there are questions about the Mets that will be answered this offseason. I think they'll be in the market for a starting pitcher and a position player. I think they're either going to sign a first baseman or a center fielder and then allow their young guys to plug the hole in the other position. I don't think they're going to sign two.
I think David Stearns is talking about making the team better on defense for sure. That it was a weakness last year. He wants to. I just don't know that the Mets are fixable in one off season the way they're currently constituted. And I want to see my way through seeing
without
that.
a young player emerging. I think it's tough, but I think they could sign a Dylan Cease or a Valdez.
I think
or a
they
Suarez.
need to.
They might also be in the market to try and trade for a Tarek Skubal. But I think another team that's going to be very active is the Atlanta Braves,
who also have a new manager.
Right, they've got a new manager. They're a team that's had a terrible year due to injuries last year. They've got a lot of good young pitching, and there's some guys that people don't even know about. If you look at Hurston Waldrep and his impressive starts that he had last year, he was really good. Same with AJ Smith-Scheuer. I think they're a team that
they're good. Their pitchers are good. They're going to come back with a vengeance this year, and I expect the Braves, Austin Riley to come back and have a much better year. They have to decide whether they're going to sign Ozzie Albies or not, which is a weird thing to be in that position.
And they're a team that typically does not go out and make big-name free agent signings. They typically prefer to work with team-friendly extensions, but I think if there was an off-season to go big on a free agent, wouldn't Bo Bichette look really interesting over in Atlanta?
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
They need a shortstop, and oh man, his defense isn't great, but you know what? You don't need great defense when Chris Sale and Spencer Strider are striking out 10-plus guys a game.
Yeah, so I just got to say that Sean Murphy's got to be the best backup catcher in baseball, because Drake Baldwin was the Rookie of the Year.
But I think ultimately there might be a team with a no bigger offseason facing them than the Philadelphia Phillies.
Well, and that's because the Phillies you want to talk about crossroads.
Right.
This is it for these guys, including Bryce Harper.
Do you spend the money to get the band back together for one last run, knowing it might screw you for a couple years after that? But you've got questions. Ranger Suarez, Kyle Schwarber. Those are big names you might have to potentially go out and spend money on. Zach Wheeler is recovering from thoracic outlet surgery. He might be ready to start next season, but that's a big might. And obviously you're bringing back Sanchez and Luzardo, but if all you have is Sanchez, Luzardo, and Nolo to start the season, that's not nearly the same strength of rotation. I think they're a team that's going to be active in the free agent market, because if they don't re-sign Schwarber, they're going to be re-signing somebody else.
I'm not a Philly fan, but I guess if I was looking at it from their perspective, I would say they should try to get the band back together one more time.
Right.
And go out and pay Schwarber and if they need to, Suarez.
It's going to be a really exciting offseason. There's going to be a lot of movement. I think the first domino to fall is going to be which of the first power hitters moves. Is it Schwarber? Is it Alonso? Is it Suarez? Is it Murakami? Shocking all of us. I know there's another 40 home run guy on the market that I'm blanking on. I know there's 4 of them that are available. Where does Josh Naylor end up? Where does Framber end up? There's some big name starting pitchers, and we're not even talking about some of the trades that are inevitably going to happen that are much harder to predict, because you don't know what teams are thinking. So I can't wait to see what we're going to end up with.
Yeah, and I think that, because of the potential labor stoppage at the end of 26, I'm keeping an eye on, is that impacting the way guys are looking at contracts, and all the agents, because they don't want to get sued. So, no, it doesn't affect our thinking at all.
We're not worried. We're not thinking about this one little bit.
Both the teams and the agents are thinking, if my guy doesn't get paid and I'm handling him, I got to find a way to get him as much as
right. You want to lock in that contract before that happens. So I think it's gonna be a very, very, as we said, the hot stove. It is a hot.
Yes, the next couple months are going to be fun.